Whether you're buying a new car or used one, it's a big investment, which is why you should choose Pennzoil Platinum. It helps extend the life of your engine and protect it up to 15 years or 500,000 miles, whichever comes first, guaranteed. That's because Pennzoil's base oil is made from natural gas and 99.5% free from engine clogging impurities. So for your next oil change, choose Pennzoil Platinum. The proof is in the Pennzoil. Enrollment required. Keep your receipts. Other conditions apply. See pennzoil.com/warranty for full details.
On app iHeartRadio.
It's Kraken Week. Now back to Softy and Dick on your home for the Seattle Kraken and the NHL. Sports Radio 950, KJR.
All right, we are back. The NHL entry draft is about to begin. Ian Furness is with us. Softy and Dick right here until 7 o'clock on 950 KJR. And guys, we had a chance to meet and hang with Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the NHL, on Wednesday. What do you say we get to beautiful Secaucus, as my relatives like to say, New Jersey, and get the opening comments of the NHL entry draft from Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Good evening, and welcome to the 2021 NHL Draft. Given its place and time shortly after the end of the Stanley Cup Final and the role it plays in focusing our league on the future, the NHL Draft is both the closing event of one season and the opening act of another. We also welcome another new member to the NHL family tonight. Picking second, the Seattle Kraken will make its first NHL Draft selection. The annual draft started in 1963. Over the years, it has changed and evolved. But one thing has remained constant no matter the name, the format, or the venue. The NHL Draft is where dreams of playing in the NHL and hoisting the Stanley Cup become more real. Congratulations to all of the players who will hear their names called over the next 2 days, and to the parents, relatives, coaches, and friends who helped get those players to this point. So let's get started. The first selection in the 2021 NHL Draft belongs to the Buffalo Sabres. Buffalo, you're on the clock.
All right, the Buffalo Sabres are on the clock. Matter of seconds. The Kraken will shortly follow after that. Gary Bettman opening comments. And as a matter of fact, boom, the pick is now in for the Buffalo Sabres. I like it. They're moving fast.
This is better than the
guys.
NFL draft.
Let's get to it. Dick is here. Ian Furness is here. The Buffalo Sabres. The Kraken will follow after this selection. Who will the Buffalo Sabres take number one? Jackson, let us know.
On behalf of the Buffalo Sabres and all of our great fans, we are proud to select from the University of Michigan, Owen Power.
All right, there you go.
Well,
no
it's ruined for me now.
Exactly.
That's what I wanted.
Owen Power, defenseman, Michigan, number one pick in the NHL draft. And you wonder if he had fallen to number two, if Ron Francis would have taken him. I guess we'll never know. But, Ian, your thoughts on this kid and what this means for the Kraken with now everybody else available on the board?
Well, I mean, it makes it really fun for Seattle because Eklund and Beniers, Clark, McTavish, a bunch of guys up front, which is where they need help, are all available. And Owen Power, most thought he would go number one. There were some thoughts maybe he did. In a lot of places had him rated about fourth or fifth overall, but he's a 6'6" defenseman, so they can skate. So he goes number one, and we find out we have 5 minutes in between picks, which is nice. So we're just about maybe 3 minutes at the most away from the first ever selection for the Seattle Kraken in the NHL draft. Who would have thought?
So you mentioned Power was rated by some 4 or 5.
Yes.
So in those power polls, in those mock drafts, is Beniers the guy that's number one in most of them?
Beniers is the guy I've seen. Eklund is also there. I think it's one of those two guys. Maybe they go McTavish or Clark, but I think it's I'm going to guess it's going to be Matthew Beniers when it's all said and done. And I mean, but I think trying to guess what Ron Francis is going to do is hard, guys.
Yeah. Well, you said something interesting. A lot of the players that you'll see in the draft you won't see for a while, but you will see the number 2 pick, correct?
I believe going back, I think it's 15 years, 12 or 15 years, that number 2 pick has played at least some NHL games the year he was drafted, yes. Now, this is a different year, guys. Again, let's go back. It's a very different year. Some of these guys are ready. McTavish, I don't think, would be ready to step in. I'm not sure if Clark would, so depending on who they pick, this might be the year that you don't see that guy step into the lineup right away. But in past history, yes, they have stepped in right away.
How well known are top 5 draft picks going into the NHL draft by the general hockey fans? Because obviously, NBA fans are also college basketball fans. They know the top 5 guys. They've seen them play. Are these guys more like Major League Baseball players where, the hardcore baseball fans don't even really know who they are?
We'll know a lot more of them next year. I'll just say that.
Okay.
I think next year we'll be a lot more keenly aware who they are because we should have a normal season in Major Junior. The Western Ontario, Quebec leagues will have normal years. College hockey will be normal. The Ivy League will be playing. World Juniors will become a bigger deal for us here in late December, early January. So I think next year we're going to really know who those guys are a lot more, and we'll be talking about those top 5. Well, let's hope they're not having a top 5 pick next year.
Right, yeah, exactly. Hey, let's hope they're picking 32nd. How's that sound next season? But the Kraken are about 2 minutes away from being on the clock and getting their pick for the number 2 selection in the NHL entry draft. I'm curious, just for example, for a guy like Beniers, who's 18 years old, when people look at his name on the internet and look at numbers, are we looking at Michigan numbers, the U.S. under 18 national team? What stats, for example, matter the most?
Here's Ron Francis, I believe. Is Ron Francis up right now? Here we go.
Yeah, we're going to get that pick in just a matter of seconds, but I'm just curious, what stats matter for a kid like that?
It depends on the year. Like this year, I think it just depends. I mean, you'll see the stats of either like the college hockey player, like power stats this year were college hockey. You will see along the way a lot of times like World Junior picks and others as well. So I mean, it just kind of depends on where it was. Depending on who the player is, like this year, so many guys played overseas, which was just weird. That was a weird thing, guys. Just guys playing overseas, these younger players that decided to play overseas. So, I mean, whoever they end up picking, it's going to be a guy that's still young, still physically undeveloped as well.
Let's get to it. Let's get to the number 2 pick in the NHL entry draft for the first time in Kraken history. They are making a pick in the entry draft. Let's get to Ron Francis and find out the newest member of the Kraken roster.
From the Space Needle in Seattle, General Manager of the Seattle Kraken, Ron Francis, will make the number 2 selection.
On behalf of Mr. David Bonderman and our entire ownership group, I'd like to thank the Commissioner and the 31 member clubs for welcoming the Seattle Kraken into the National Hockey League. And on behalf of our passionate fans, I'm proud to make a historical first ever amateur draft selection for our team by choosing from the University of Michigan, Matthew Beniers.
There you go. You called it, man. Great call. Ian Furness, right on the money. Matthew Beniers, he's 18 years old, 6'2", 175 pounds. He's 18 years old again, 24 games with the Wolverines a year ago, 10 goals, 14 assists, played for the U.S. under 18 and under 17 national team. Did very well for both those clubs, did very well for Michigan. Matthew Beniers, Ian Furness, we're hoping one day is going to be an MVP candidate, hoping one day is going to lead this team to a Stanley Cup championship. Matthew Beniers out of Hingham, Massachusetts, the newest member, Ian, of the Kraken. Go for it.
Well, I think one of the things that jumps out is he's got great speed. He's a center iceman, which is hard to find. You have to have a top line center iceman. Teams that win Stanley Cups have number 1 center iceman. He's that. I was talking about what the transition was this year in terms of what these guys had to do, and maybe someone overseas and some did other things. Matthew Beniers, which probably speaks to his character, was going to go to Harvard. He was a Harvard kid. He was going to go play in the Ivy League, but of course that didn't happen because the Ivy League canceled, so he ended up going to Michigan instead. Had a nice year for Michigan, played in the World Juniors, played really well. The World Juniors is basically the best 19-year-olds and under in the world. It's a huge tournament every year. The Americans won gold, thanks in part to what Matthew Beniers did, winning gold, and he beat Team Canada. That's always a big deal, especially because the tournament was north of the border this year, even without fans. Then he played in the World Hockey Championships against professional players after the season was over. That's against NHL players from all across the world in the World Championships, played there as well. Skating is above average. Good playmaker. They say he's a really good defensive forward as well. I love the pick. I think it's a great pick, and it seems, I'll be honest with you, taking Owen Power to me was great for Seattle because it allowed them, without hesitation, to take a kid like Beniers.
All right, Ian, let's welcome in the TV voice of the Kraken. He's a guy that we'll get to know very, very well. John Forsland is with us again on the radio show. And first of all, John, thanks for doing this. And second of all, give us your take on not just the selection of Matthew Beniers from Michigan, but everything that's happened with this franchise in the last 48 hours.
Well, Softy, thanks for having me. My head's been spinning all week. It's been a tremendous week for myself and my family. We've been able to be part of all this. We've been able to make contact with the fan base a little bit on Wednesday. And draft day is always special, right? It's always special for these 32 young men who get an opportunity to be the first draft choice of their respective teams. And in this case, it's historic. In this case, I think the best thing that I heard all season about this young man was that his game reminded a good friend of mine who's been a scout in the league for a long time of Ron Francis, right? So his style of play, very similar. He's a heady guy. He competes hard. He's strong in all areas of the game, offensively, defensively. So, yes, it's just another launching point for this franchise, and it's been a brilliant week.
There were many surprised at the youth of the draft on Wednesday. No real established big money stars. Did that surprise you as well?
Not really, because when you look at expansion drafts, and if you even look at the original list that Vegas went with, you could make a strong argument in a couple of cases that this team did better. Now, what happens during the regular season, that's going to be a tough bar to reach. But when you look at it, I think most importantly, I go by position. So if you want to stockpile the best players you can defensively, then go for that, because that's achievable. High-end, offensive, elite players are obviously not going to be available. It's hard to get those. They have the cap room. They have an opportunity to get involved in free agency. We'll see what happens there. There's a strong commitment from ownership that way. So I don't think the puzzle has completely been filled out yet, but I like the character aspect of some of these guys that they drafted. I really like the back end. I like the defense. The goalies, a little bit of a leap of faith. There's a small sample size with Drager, but he's proven that he can do it at this level, and I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder to prove that he's a legitimate starting goaltender at the NHL level. So, I think it's a good starting point. I also think, based on competitive balance, the division and all of that, the fans here are going to see that this team can compete, and that's the most important thing. And if I know anything about Ronnie, it's a bigger picture that he has to keep in mind too, and you want to get to a point, in a couple of years down the road where this team is very legit, not a flash in the pan. And I'm not saying Vegas is, but I'd like to see where that roster is, say, in 3 seasons, because they've got some older players, star players, no question, but you have to keep that in mind too. So it's a starting point, like I said.
Hey, John, it's Ian Furness. First of all, welcome to Seattle. We're excited to have you here, one of the best in the business. So it's awesome to have you as a part of this organization, as a part of our community as well. I want to go back to Matty Beniers for a second. Late birthday, so he's 19. He's older, as mentioned to Softy and Dick earlier. He's an older player by NHL draft standards because of that late birth date. You were around Ron Francis for a long time. I'll just add one thing to what you said. The Ron Francis comparison is interesting because everything I've seen and read about Matty Beniers, really, really responsible in his own end. And you love that about a player coming into the league when you don't have to kind of work. Because most of these junior kids, a lot of these junior kids come out, hey, man, let's get up and down and put some points up. This is a kid that's responsible inside his own zone. But when you're around Ron Francis in years past, a kid like this, it's a late birthday. He's a number 2 overall pick. How much of a chance is Ron going to give him to make this team right off the get-go?
Well, he's going to, there's a lot of great points there, Ian, and I heard, how you were describing the player before I hit the air, and everything you said is everything that's been said about this kid and more. So I think, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but if I know Ronnie as I do, I think he's going to give him a legitimate chance to see where he is. Now, managers have to be careful. They don't want to get too far ahead of themselves, and they have to be really sure if they're going to lock in, even with a late birthday, if you're going to do something like that. But Ronnie was in the same position as a young player, and when he broke in the early '80s, it was the same situation with Hartford. It was a team that had come over from the World Hockey Association. It was basically an expansion team, and he gave them every reason, not to send them somewhere else. And I think that's what Matty will have to do. But it's an open book. It's going to be a situation where he can come in here and see where he fits. They'll have a long look at him, and then they'll make an assessment. But if you're going to put him in a spot where he can succeed and not have his confidence crushed, this is a really difficult league. And there are not a lot of kids, 18, 19, that can automatically come in and make a difference. But we'll see. And in this situation, maybe you don't have to. But based on his makeup, his IQ level as a player, I think that'll bode well. That will take him a long way. That put Ronnie in an excellent spot as a player. Because you're right. I've seen many players, and my most recent experience was in Carolina with Andrei Svechnikov, 18-year-old. And he could be a superstar, and he's a burgeoning superstar right now. He scored 20 goals in his rookie season, all at even strength, but he played on a third line all year, and it was a work in progress defensively, but they lived with it. I'm not 100% sure that the Kraken have to do that with this player. If they're not 100% sure, then he goes back to college, and he continues the season. When the time is right, you make your move.
John Forsland with us, Ian Furness with us as well on Softy and Dick. The Kraken selecting Matty Beniers, center from Michigan at number 2. Guys, the Ducks just took Mason McTavish, center. He was playing overseas in Europe after the Ontario Hockey League got canceled due to COVID, so he was just the 3rd pick. And I'm kind of glad you brought that up, John, about this kid's future, because in any sport that we are, typically in the mainstream used to covering, with a baseball draft, NFL, NBA, a number 2 pick is a prized possession, and that's a guy that we expect to become a superstar at number 2, whether it's Kevin Durant to the Sonics back in the day or Dustin Ackley behind Steven Strasburg back in the day. Number 2 pick's a big damn deal. Is it fair for fans to start dreaming about this guy being a superstar?
Well, he should be, right? I mean, he should be, and let's just say he becomes, a star player, superstar. I don't know. Again, forecasters have said this is an excellent draft, but I don't know if either one of these players in the first 2, 3, maybe 5 deep are generational, like we've seen with McDavid, like we saw back in the day with Crosby and Ovechkin. I can't speak to that, okay? In my bag of tricks, I don't spend a lot of time with it till I see the players at this level and then deal with them. But I can tell you this, and it's an excellent point, because fans have to keep in mind that this is not like basketball. This is really, not anything close to football. The automatic transition from the levels that these kids are playing at to the National Hockey League is very difficult to make. And that automatic transition is not, just hand in glove. So, have some patience, see what happens. I hope he hits the ground running. I hope that would be a great story. And we've seen it. We've also seen a lot of players flame out because confidence, it hits them at the wrong time. These guys are used to dominating. They're used to being the best players all the time. And then they come in, and it's a different dynamic. It depends on where the team's at, depends on who's in that locker room, the coach, and, whether or not you're going to ruin their confidence and then what you have on the other side of that. So it's not as easy as it appears in the NHL. And sometimes you just have to take a deep breath and let nature take its course.
John, I'll throw one more at you real quick. Oftentimes you'll see NHL teams go an entire draft without drafting a goaltender. I don't think that'll be the case. I would assume with what Seattle has, the 3 netminders right now, that they're going to want to get a goalie sometime on day 2. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I would think, to guess, they check all the boxes positionally. I think that makes 100% sense. Again, you're building a prospect pool, and you're going to add to it moving forward. And that's what this is all about. You just want to make sure that you're deep everywhere. And with a goaltender, as you know, there's a much larger developmental curve than we see with skaters, with forwards and defense. Because again, the most important thing for a goalie is between the ears. It's confidence, it's presence, it's being. You look at Drager, right? You look at his body of work so far. I mean, that's a guy who's knocked around all the way down to the ECHL. And had to take a 1-year contract to bet on himself at the minor league level, minor league money, just to get in a slot, just to get that opportunity. And now when he hits 25, 26, boom, there it is. Yeah. Small sample size, but now he's a legitimate 1A at this level with a brand new team. So that's how long it takes, especially at that position.
John Forsland, TV voice of the Kraken. Great stuff. Always love having you on. Appreciate the insight to Matty Beniers and the Kraken. We'll talk very soon, my friend. Thanks, you, pal. John.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
You got it. All right, let's do this, guys. We got a short break. The Devils are on the clock now at number 4. We just told you Anaheim took Mason McTavish, center from Ontario. He played overseas in Europe after that league got canceled. New Jersey's on the clock right now. Will they take Luke Hughes and pair him up with his brother Jack in New Jersey? We'll find out in a matter of minutes. But really for us, the big news, Matty Beniers, center, Michigan, number 2 pick by the Kraken, and their first ever draft. Ian Furness continues with us on Softy and Dick next on 950 KJ.
Ever feel like you've looked through every car shopping website but still haven't found the car you really want and don't know what's actually a good deal? That's where Car Gurus comes in handy. Car Gurus gives every car a deal rating from great to overpriced using an impartial, unbiased algorithm. Plus, they have millions of cars to choose from. The best part? With Car Gurus, you can see key details, find financing, and shop from cars that can be delivered all from home. Ready to find a great deal on the car for you? Grab your phone and head to CarGurus.com.